Welcome to the Group Home Riches Podcast. If you have the desire to be your own boss, create your own schedule, and become financially free while at the same time helping people in need, then you've come to the right place. At grouphomeriches.com, we teach people exactly like yourself how to get started in the group home business. And on this podcast, you're going to hear their stories firsthand. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Group Home Riches Podcast. Today's guest is Harris Terrell. Harris has been emailing us a little bit back and forth. He's somewhat of a new member, but I could tell he's got some experience in real estate investing, and it sounds like he is just off to an absolute massive start. So I'm excited to hear his story and what he's done in his first under a year of being in the group home business. Harris, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm a big fan of the podcast, so it's almost surreal being on it now. So I'm excited.
Love to hear it. We also have the founder of Group Home Riches, Mr. Andy Rothschild. Andy, welcome.
Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate you putting this on as normal.
Yes, sir. So can't wait to hear this story, Harris. Before we kind of get into the nitty gritty stuff, why don't you just give the folks and me and Andy a little bit of introduction. Let us know where you're from and a little bit of a background. What were you doing before you found Group Home Riches and the group home business model?
Sure. My name is Harris Terrell, and I am the qualifying agent or license holder for our family firm. We practice construction, real estate development. We do long-term buy and holds here in Central Florida. We've been doing that here pretty much all my life, but my parents actually started the business about 23 years ago and going. They've been here based out of Central Florida for the last almost 40 years. I took over in 2012, and then I've been kind of doing my thing ever since. We went from working for area contractors and developers to the national home builders as a subcontractor doing shell construction. From there, we went into doing a lot of government contracting for different SHIP, CDBG, and HUD programs. And then from that, we went out on our own full time. So now we only do our own work. So we buy it, we build it, we fix it, refi out, or on the spec builds, stuff that we do new construction, we'll sell those. But that's pretty much what we do now.
That's awesome.
Yeah, amazing. You hear a lot of talk about it, and I think it's a common goal that most people have: generational wealth, creating a legacy, things like that. So I want to give big props to your parents, because everybody talks it, but very few people actually get something set up like that.
Absolutely.
So that is awesome. So it was a family business and you just got started right out of the gate. Was it after high school, college? Did you try anything else, or did you just...
Yeah, let me tell you, I actually thought I was gonna go study law. So I went to school out of state, ended up flunking out, and came right back here to Florida. But summers and weekends growing up, I'd always been involved in the real estate and construction business. But it kind of went from a thing of my parents did that to put myself and all my siblings through school and brought us up. And then from there, I said, oh, well, let me do the white collar route, or let me do something that sounds or looks a little bit more prestigious. But turns out I'm not that good of a student. I came back. I had a few credits underneath my belt, and I took a look around and saw my folks were hitting hard cap on what we were doing. And I said, well, let me see about getting licensed to see if we can't lever up and start stepping out and doing some things on our own without getting too wordy. But my folks all through my childhood were buying little old houses in some of the worst parts of town, or the houses that no one would touch, or the houses that people were afraid of. And they did it one by one, almost doing everything out of pocket. My parents do come from Jamaica, and that background, leveraging credit, utilizing loans and financing to take down properties, that wasn't something that my parents were either familiar or comfortable with. So I grew up underneath that. And then when I came back, I said, all right, let me see how I can be helpful to the family business. And I went out and got licensed as a general contractor at 21, leveraging, my background, my experience, and then I was able to sit for the test. So again, to reiterate, I'm not a great student, but I'm an excellent test taker.
Harris, it sounds like you and I have a lot in common.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of those podcasts you've listened to, but it sounds like between you and your parents, there's a lot of similarities.
Andy, some of your favorite topics. We have a hungry immigrant story.
It's absolutely perfect. I've read enough books and met enough people to tell you what the formula is, and this is the formula. Immigrant, buy the cheap rundown houses in bad neighborhoods, and then I'm a big believer that real estate truly is a C student business. Like you, I was not the best student. It never interested me. I mean, the whole time I was just like, all right, why are we learning all this stuff anyways? Aren't we learning it to make money? Teach me how to make money. And they would never do that. Real estate is definitely a C student business. And if you're willing to get out there and work hard, and obviously you got to have a good IQ on you, but you can do very well. But yeah, what a hell of a story.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I watched my dad. My mom held down the house and supported my dad, and my dad would be working from like 4 a.m. and then he'd come home around 6-ish, eat dinner, and then he would leave again, and he was working on those houses. So, on school nights, that was my reality, and then on the weekends, he would bring us out. Again, I got a whole bunch of brothers and sisters. He would bring the boys out, and we kind of watched that. And now that I look back on it, I have a whole different sense of appreciation and understanding of how he made it happen. So that's a huge driver for me today.
Oh, that's awesome. Hey, question for you. So when your dad would bring you to those job sites, what did you think and what did your brothers or sisters think back then? And were you like, oh, we don't want to do this? Or was your dad a hard driver and he's like, get it done? What was going on in your head back then?
Man, a little bit of both. I watched a lot of South Orlando built. So we were in some of these master plan communities, being the first ones there. And I'm wondering why my dad's got us out here in this dirt, this weird vacant place. It's 2, 3 houses in there. We're the only ones in there. So most of the time, we would hang out and play in the sand piles or go around picking up cans. We were doing everything but soak up the game that my dad was trying to expose us to. But I think indirectly, just us being out there, for me, I'll say it got into me through osmosis. And this is probably, I was in the single digits. And then moving on to where we were actually able to, swing a hammer and stuff. And again, this is before social media and before phones with cameras on it. So we were out on the job site doing things that you probably couldn't get away with now. So it's proven invaluable.
That is awesome.
What's the company like now? Do you want to give us an idea of how big the
Oh,
portfolio
yeah, sure. So we've got about 50 rental properties scattered throughout Central Florida. The majority of those are just traditional single family homes. We have some quads and some duplexes. And then we've got a whole bunch of land. We've been banking up land through either tax deed sales, stuff that we find as a for sale by owner, pick that up through a quick claim deed, stuff like that. So, we got about properties, and then we got a whole bunch of, I would guess maybe around maybe 50, 60 spot lots scattered throughout Central Florida. So that's about where we're at right now.
Hey, Harris. So on the spot lots, I've never really done any ground up construction. I mean, I've done some very small stuff. Is that your game plan for the land? You guys will just build on it and then sell it off? Or how do you look at that?
The spot lots that we own here in Kissimmee and Orlando, originally that was kind of the goal, to sell them off. But over the last, I would say even 5 years, that plan has completely gone out the window. We're strictly holding anything that we own in the Orlando Metro here specifically. We do have some stuff that might be out in like Polk County. Those we'll do spec. We'll throw a house down on there and sell those off. But everything in Kissimmee and Orlando, we've been sitting on those. And our plan is to develop something on there, income producing, and then we'll do a refi out and then rinse and repeat. So
Awesome. Yeah, that's a real interesting point that you made for all the listeners about you go in, whether it's Jamaica, anywhere in Latin America, quite frankly, most of the world outside of maybe like Europe and some other places, getting debt is not necessarily, it's not easy here in the United States, but it's damn near impossible whenever you go down to Mexico or Brazil or wherever it is, you see these half-built structures all over the place. And the reason is these people ran out of money. The reason they ran out of money is because they got to build these things for cash. Versus here in the US, like you just said, you can go get a loan for 100% of the cost of constructing it.
Yes.
So that was a good observation on your end.
Yes, sir. And what I'll say to kind of dovetail off of that is I can remember, let's see now, be about 8 or 9 years ago now, where I actually started putting in applications to try to get a hard money lender to work with us. This is before I knew even a fraction of what I know now about actually getting financing done. We
Yeah.
had so much trouble because we would show them our portfolio, show them our P&Ls. There was no track record of any of the mortgages behind the properties. They're all owned free and clear. So now you can imagine they're looking at us crazy. We've got a whole bunch of income producing property that's owned free and clear. You know, how did you get it? Where'd you come from? We heard of you before. So that was the hurdle we had to get through and get past. So
it's also pretty difficult the younger you are. And it just takes time, energy, and effort. You got to go through so many of these lenders. I got pretty lucky. I started doing this in 2000, but I would say about 2005, 2006, it started getting a little bit more restrictive on getting financing.
Right.
And then from call it '07 to maybe even '06 to like maybe early part of 2009, it was damn near impossible to get financing. So that's when I started having to go to all the local banks because all like the third party conduit lenders were gone. And then you start batting your head up against the wall trying to convince bankers to give you money. But eventually you run into one of them that likes you for whatever reason and is willing to do a deal with you. But it takes a long time.
yeah, it took a lot of work and effort to find someone that wasn't trying to, for lack of a better word, bend us over and take us for what we got. I'll send the paperwork in. They'll tell me, oh, they want 4 points on the front end and the back end, stuff like that. And I was like, what? I said, that doesn't sound right. So we put in the work. I found a guy that was based out of Connecticut willing to lend to us. And then we did a few deals with them. And then that got me to another deal where I found a lender who I would consider almost a friend now, who's been cheering us along the way. Of course, money exchanges hands, but if I bring him a deal, he'll get it done for us. And I think my story resonated with him. He came out, met myself, met my dad. We walked him to a few of our job sites. And then ever since, he's been an invaluable resource because we buy a lot of distressed, dilapidated, some properties that may be facing condemnation. And we got to kind of swoop in there and throw some permits on there to city or county from demoing it. He's the guy that's been getting those deals done for us. So,
if you don't mind me asking, what are you buying stuff for right now, these cheap ones? And then my second question is, back in the day, you can give the date ranges or the years. What was your father picking up those houses for, the cheap ones, back whenever he started doing it?
When my dad was doing it, he was getting them for probably around $25,000, $50,000 a piece for a 2-2 or a 3-2 that you need to gut and put back together. He was then paying back the rehab funds because he did a couple hard money loans back then, but he hated it. Because I'll go back through the records now and trace back our path and our history. The majority of the properties my dad got were through either dilapidated properties or those couple that he got through hard money, but the lion's share had been through tax details. They got good at going to the court steps and throwing down a number and getting something for around, I look back, there was something for like 10,000, 16,000. So now fast forward to me now, I was able to score one that was facing condemnation in 2015 for 5,000 and we closed via quitclaim deed. But that one's got all sorts of issues. It was tied to a slumlord in the area that got real famous for essentially being a slumlord. So that one that's an outlier. The majority of our properties that we get now are somewhere if it's a traditional single family, maybe like 1,000 square feet or so, we'll get that for maybe around 100 to 130. And then we'll get some multifamilies that have been gutted. So in 2020, we pulled down a 3-unit for 300,000. And then we've got some others that'll hover around, kind of our sweet spot for the ones that we do for traditional single families Or somewhere around, I would say about 110, 120 to about 150. That's our sweet spot for those. The ones that we do for the group homes is a little bit different.
Wonderful.
Very cool. You guys are getting a whole bunch of high level game today. Harris, so you guys have the small land deals, a couple multifamilies. Is it mostly buy and hold, or do you guys do any like flips, wholesales, or anything like that? Or is it just the long-term stuff?
Yeah. So right now we're doing mostly long-term stuff. Everything that we've been buying, like even in the last, I would say, year, has been for the sole purpose of us rehabbing it and then refinancing out, taking out at least what we put in, sometimes a little bit or a lot more, and then taking that same capital, putting it back to work again, rinse and repeat. The wholesales, I buy from wholesalers. Some properties we get off of the MLS too. And again, it's because of the type of property we take down. We don't face a whole lot of competition because most of the properties we have issues. They're unfinanceable or their rehabs are too big for most folks to either want to take on or even are able to take on.
You guys having the construction company and that background for so long, I'm sure gives you a competitive advantage on that.
Absolutely. And I'll add to that. And I think now I'm thinking I probably didn't answer your question earlier about our size. I mentioned the size of our portfolio. So we've got 8 guys that are W-2 on payroll right now. And then we've got some clerical folks, which include my parents. I'm in between both. So that's about the size of our force. But we do got a lot of connections that come straight from my dad being in the area for so long, where pretty much anything, we can make one call and get a vendor or someone that knows someone that can help us get something done. And that's proven, again, invaluable. I hate to keep reusing that word. Now I'm starting to catch myself. In addition to that, I hold most of our licenses. So I'm a certified general contractor. I'm a roofing contractor, air conditioning contractor, and I'm an EPA certified lead renovator. We also have some other trade contractors that we've been working for almost 15, 20 years now. Anything that comes up on the properties that we take on, it's pretty quick for us to get the paperwork done and get the permitting in and get that handled. So,
If I can make a quick comment just for all the listeners, I want everybody to really think about how long it takes to build an amazing business. Your father started buying this stuff, what, in the early 2000s? So it's 2024. I mean, it's 24 years. These things take a long time. Every great business takes a long time to build. Rome was not built in a day. Keep that in mind when you're listening to Harris, like, oh my gosh, she's doing this, and everything else. These things take a long time. And obviously you guys have been nurturing it. You've been caring for it. You've been minding your business every single day, taking care of your business. And then it's just been compounding and growing over time. All this stuff takes a long time.
mm-hmm.
There's no secrets. There's no like magical application that you guys are going to fill out. There's no website you're going to go to be able to establish a business like this. And also don't gloss over the fact that Harris's dad was putting in about, it sounds like at least 70 to 80 hour work weeks for a significant.
Yeah.
For as long as I can remember. I moved out at 18 and I can remember from single digits onto when I left for school. That's what he did. And even now, he's still in the field. I can't get him out of it. And again, I wouldn't try to. He does take a few more vacations than he used to. He's probably done more now in the last couple of years than my whole childhood. And I celebrate it because he earned it. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Honestly, it'd be pretty cool to actually do an interview with your dad one of these days.
And that's if
Not to take anything away from you, but it's just
No.
amazing for everybody to hear this stuff.
Yeah, I don't take it like that way at all. My parents' biggest cheerleader. I'm excited to share my part of the story, but again, it's paying homage to them. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So Harris, I'm sure you mimicked that, and I'm sure you inherited some of that work ethic. For the folks listening out there, when you guys complain to us or say that things aren't working, and then we ask you, hey, how many calls did you make this week?
Right.
And like 4. I mean, you guys you're doing about less than 5 hours of actionable work. So love to hear it, man. Inspiring story, amazing background.
You got to risk looking a little bit crazy.
Yeah. 100%. I got in the habit of not telling people my plans
Mm-hmm.
unless it's a business partner or somebody like that. So 100%. Let's switch gears a little bit from the investing stuff to the group home side of things. You have this amazing construction company, real estate, multiple facets, very successful on that side of things. What made you start to look into the group home stuff? Like, how did you even find us?
Again, we've been doing the traditional Burr method. When the interest rates went up, that basically chomped into our bottom line because we rely on our refis to then take that capital, keep everything moving, and then roll into the next property. So once interest rates started to kind of make that upward curve, we said, all right, how can we get more out of our rentals? Our thing was, is we're sitting on all these homes. What can we do to maximize things? If we have a garage or if we have a weird little shed or something on a property, and again, it lends to the type of property we're buying. A lot of folks were putting these makeshift, maybe a little sink or a little bath, poorly executed, but the concept was there. So, a lot of times we would buy these properties and they had these like weird little apartments, weird little ADUs. And we said, well, we can do this better. So when we were taking on these properties, we said, all right, well, we make them nice. We might have a traditional single family in the front, an ADU or two ADUs that may have been done illegally back in the 60s or 70s, but we can make them nice and then turn a decent profit off of them. So we started taking a harder look at what we already been doing and then trying to figure out how we can twist it a little bit to keep what we're doing going. And that was our answer was to try to get more people into these single family properties that we've been taking down. I then started going out and looking for different platforms online because renting by the room or renting by these little ADUs or whatever. I said, all right, there must be some way to make it more efficient because I'm already swamped. I'm already super busy. There was a couple of the apps that are out there. I can't even think of their names right now that do the same thing. And it kind of opened us up this niche. They called it like shared living or co-op. And then I started digging into that. And then things just started, the links started opening up. And then I said, all right, let me dig in here and do some research on this shared living concept. It kind of kept stepping me closer and closer to the group home concept. And then I started typing in group home, and then that's when Group Home Riches came up and some other podcasts and stuff that were in the space. So I just started diving in on YouTube. I got Group Home Riches, and then I jumped over to the podcast. So I'm listening to them when I'm driving. And then from there, I said, all right, this is something I need to investigate. Once I started hearing the numbers, I said, no, this is what we need to do. And then from there, I just, when I usually jump on something, especially something new, I kind of obsess over it until I get it. That's kind of been my way of attacking this new thing. So
That's a killer mindset for folks to take note of there, to become obsessed with something.
Question for you on that. Were you thinking at all about the increased cash flow as far as like how that could assist you in any way from a debt service coverage ratio standpoint, or even just, hey, if I get a couple more of these things up and going, this could actually cover all the W-2 employees we have? Did that thought pop into your head at all? Or was it more, hey, we've got these ADUs in the back, let's do something with them?
you touched on it because most of ours when we refi out are DSCR loans. So it's just hitting that ratio. So it's like, all right, if you hit a 1.2, then you get frowned upon. You hit a 0.9, you're doing extremely well. So I said, all right, well, how can we make these deals a no brainer for our lender so he can keep trying to pour money into us? Because now I can't even count how many that are begging us to take money from them. So it's now a thing. My problem now is managing our current workload and kind of keeping everything running smoothly rather than figuring out how to get the money to take down the next deal.
That's awesome.
You had mentioned some of the other applications that you first found. I believe you mentioned it via email, I think, but with
Yeah,
padsplit.
did you want to mention it here? Okay, I didn't know if I could, but yeah, so I stumbled upon like a padsplit. I think another one is called what is it, a roommate finder or something like that. And then I went around and I created profiles on there to see how it worked and what kind of feedback we would get if I, threw up a room on there. And I'll easily say of all the ones that I've kind of sampled and tested, padsplit has proven to be, awesome. It really is. But again, it's got its limitations, especially for what we're doing now. But it certainly is an option to get a traditional single family home. I would say you want at least 4 or 5 bedrooms for it to really make sense. But you throw that up on PadSplit, you do it the right way. You meet their standard, and it's been fairly smooth sailing on PadSplit since. But that's just one avenue we've taken, and I don't know if you want me to get into others yet, but you let me know.
At the end of the day, whatever demographic you want to serve, even if it's general population like that, or even college housing, at the end of the day, it's just affordable shared housing.
Exactly.
Yep.
So
yeah,
is PadSplit, and I'm generally just curious because I've heard about it, but haven't had a lot of experience with people actually using it. Is that you put the property up or the rooms up and you're just advertising to the general population and then you're renting by the room, or how does it work?
Yes. So on PadSplit, you essentially you lease the whole property over to PadSplit. PadSplit creates a separate entity that is actually the tenant, and then the members are folks that are they pay a subscription fee to be a member of PadSplit, and then they pay to get access to the homes. It's basically Airbnb for room rentals. You as the owner, who is the host, known as the host, you furnish the property. You throw in a bed, a dresser. You make sure you have a closet or something that functions as a closet. So say you convert a dining room or a living room, and you throw up 2 walls and make that a room. You might have a wardrobe or something like that in there. Take some good pictures, and then you're advertising by the room on the platform, and that's kind of how they got it set up.
Very interesting. What was the cash flow once you started doing that on PadSplit compared to the traditional rental model that you guys were doing?
Sure. So we got one in Orlando that would have rented. It's a 3-2 in the area that it's in. Would have rented for probably around $2,000 a month. For the members that are in that house, we're doing about 3,200 for the members that live in that house. And then on that same property, we also have a structure in the backyard that's actually cut into 4 what we call mini suites or ADUs. And again, we're kind of hovering in that gray area where you may have code compliance restrictions or land development code restrictions that say you can only have 1 ADU per dwelling, stuff like that. But again, the properties we buy are usually older, were completely dilapidated, or had some makeshift things going on in there that we just cleaned up and made them a whole lot better. So that property, I guess, would be an outlier. But in the back, we're doing on that back building 5,500 a month, and so on the front building we're doing about that 30. What did I say, 32 or 34?
Yeah.
So for a property that would have rented, say we did a regular single family in the back, maybe another $2,000 in the front. So 4 versus 80, 84. So you're doing a little bit more better than double. Excuse me, 84, 87. So you're doing a little bit better than double your gross rent. So
Unbelievable. Once you started doing the calculations and when you were first looking into it, that was probably a big motivator for you to kind of go gung
yeah,
ho on, right?
yeah. The crazy thing is when we saw the deal, it just looked like just a regular duplex to us. And we said, all right, we can throw down 2 single families on there and off to the races. But we looked across the street, and the way that the property is set up, we saw some little digital locks on the doors. I said, that looks like a rooming house. So I just did a quick address search for the house across the street, and it came right up on a PadSplit. And then that's what kind of spurred that research again. And I said, no, we're gonna do what they're doing. And then that's how that went. So.
Excellent. Excellent.
Mhm.
You're crushing it, man. These are such great stories for me to listen to, Brandon to listen to, but also just everybody that's part of the community.
Yes, sir.
Let's do like a little bit of the timeline. So how long ago did you start to like when you were getting obsessed with that? How long ago was that?
With the group home?
Well, just the rooming, the
Oh yeah,
rooming,
okay.
the
So
shared living.
yes,
When did
yes.
the search initially
So
start?
so this would have started back in November, October, November of last year.
Okay.
So I'm doing all the research, and then I would say that I also coupled some of my knowledge with what I mentioned before, where we did a lot of government contracting. So we were doing SHIP, CDBG, and HUD, which is you get government money that comes down distributed at the state level, the county level, and the city level, depending on the jurisdiction and whatever they got set up. And we were a contractor that was doing the work on the homes that that these funds would pay for. So the clients were disabled, they were elderly, or severely low income. So you have someone that's living in a house that's falling apart around them. They can't afford to fix it. There are programs out there at either the city level, the county level, or the state level that can help. And we were a contractor that was doing the work that those funds provided for. So I was very familiar with procurement and looking up, ITBs and RFQs and digging around and understanding how money works, especially government money works. And I kind of use that to figure out, all right, what monies are being set aside to address homelessness, people who are suffering from addiction, stuff like that. And from there, I reached out to those organizations and introduced myself. And I said, hey, I'd love to set aside some of the property that we own to help try to address, either homelessness or home instability. Because again, with what we were doing and how we do it, we do have some margin. So I don't have to try to get the top of the market rents. I can get 15 to 20% below market rents for what we were doing, which is those traditional single families, and then get them rented, get a solid tenant in there that can afford it, and then just move on to the next. Because that was my mindset: was you buy an old house, fix it up, make it affordable, get somebody in there, refi out, go and then do it again. And again, it's a trade-off to everything. While that may be a stable a way to do things or a safer way to do things, you're going to cut back on your upside. So it's a balance. So we still do the group homes and the traditional single families, but we've got the flexibility to say, all right, we've got a vacancy that came up. What do we want to do with it? Oh yeah, it's a 2-bedroom. Okay, make it a 3 and then just make it a regular rental, or look at cutting it up and making it into a group home. So we got that flexibility. So I think the biggest thing that or the biggest favor that we did for ourselves is give ourselves options.
Yeah. If you are an investor and you're listening to this, I would just consider the shared housing, affordable housing, cooperative living as just another tool in your tool belt. And Andy, I'll let you riff on that. It's not like, group homes are not the only thing that you've been doing, correct?
No, they're not. I think that, in my personal opinion, all of these strategies have a time and a place. That's why I was asking you earlier on. I was like, were you doing it for the cash flow, or were you doing it to kind of help out with the DSCRs? What was your reasoning? So for me, I know I sound like a broken record. All you guys have heard this before, but if you go back about 20 years, maybe a little bit longer, my primary goal of getting into real estate was to get me out of having a regular full-time W-2 job. That was my end all be all goal. And the number that I had written down, and it took me forever, was $4,000 a month. That's how much money I wanted to make. And so anyways, finally, I did all these rental properties and frankly, I mean, it just wasn't getting me where I wanted it to take me. But the minute that I got one of these group homes set up, I'm like, holy shit, I'm making $2,000 extra a month. I would have been making 200. And then I set up another one and I got another 2,000. So for me, that was my primary goal. And so I think that all of these, like Brandon was saying, all of these little tools, they've got a time and a place. I mean, I'm at the point right now, the group homes are a lot more operationally intensive. I don't want to mess with group homes anymore. I don't really, I mean, we still have them, but I got somebody running everything. Even the rental properties, it's almost too much work for me. You know, I would rather just loan money out. So loaning money out is, for me, it's like the easiest thing to do at this point in my life.
And again, I look up to you all. It's like, all right, this is the next step from here. But my thing is where I'm at now. I'm trying to master what we're doing now, and we've just only gotten started in the group home business. So again, the numbers are absolutely insane. And if you all don't mind, I can touch on where we've been going as of late, because we've been moving away from the traditional single families into going neck deep into group homes. So I can kind of talk about what we got going if y'all don't mind. So
Absolutely.
what we're doing now is the type of property that we pick up has changed. We look for a certain hitbox, I guess, where certain areas that are close to major transit, whether it be here in Central Florida, we got the Sunrail, or you got the Lynx bus, somewhere centralized to the highways, because everybody's using Uber. And then we target properties that are at least 1,800 square feet under air. The last few pickups that I've done have been these big, weird properties where folks have just done additions over the years. One was 2,800, another one was 3,500. I've got another one in Winter Park that's about 4,000 square feet. And at this point, to me, it doesn't matter the current condition of the property. It's just how I can utilize it. So our price point has stepped up quite a bit, especially since we dove into doing group homes. My last three pickups were we did one for 450, one for 500. We did one for 260. And we're able to do that because, again, we're doing all the rehab ourselves. And then once we get them operational, I've got one in St. Cloud that's got 11 beds, 11 baths, but they're all cut up into their own private suites. So, again, a little twist on what the 2-bed per room model. We just do all privates. And I've got some vets in there. They got vouchers that cover for $1,400 a month. And then I've got folks that self-pay at $1,200 a month. And I've got a property that's got 11 of those in St. Cloud. And then in Kissimmee, I've got one that's got 5 of those, and then a 5-bedroom wing of the house that shares a kitchen. You all do the math there. It's an absolute no-brainer, and that's why we kind of dove in. And all of my open projects now on the rehab side are strictly to do group homes now. So,
Dude, I love it.
Safe to say you're a fan of the business model.
Absolutely. It's an absolute no-brainer.
Are there any other advantages compared to the traditional buy and hold model?
Well, in addition to cash flow, I'll say you're less worried about vacancy because between the mortgage and utilities, internet, all that we cover, I need to come up with just under $4,000 a month to keep everything in check. And I'm doing somewhere around 12,000, 12 or 13,000. So even if we had one day half of our people get up and leave or just they stop paying, we're covered. So you look at that on one property and then extrapolate that out for us, we've got a whole bunch of single family rentals where it's a thought in your mind where that could happen. That's not a concern at all on the ones that have that shared group or a group home model. So in addition to that, so your vacancy is not an issue. And we're able to tap into a demographic or that's being overlooked by current offerings, especially here in Central Florida, where the definition of affordable, what is that, 80% of the gross? That number, most of our folks are nowhere near that. They're hovering around 30, 35K a year. And our models, especially in the privates that we do, are affordable for folks that are making around that income or are on fixed income or are getting vouchers. So we're wide open to all different pools and groups of people that may be getting assisted or may not be getting assisted. So we're mitigating our risk in that you have a traditional single family, 1 or 2 parents that are earning income, something happens to one of them, they're calling you or sending you a text message that the rent's going to be late. And then you're relying on them to keep that so you can keep your lenders happy. Those aren't concerns in the group home model. So I think that's
You want to expand on why that's not a worry for you? Just for
Um,
the
yeah, well, because our risk is kind of spread amongst all of our occupants or all of our residents. So the type of properties we've been doing have somewhere around 8 to 10 people. We have some that are in development that'll have more. So again, we just have more people who have more income earning potential. I think that is that we do such a great job on them. A lot of folks are just grateful to be there. They're excited that this option even exists. They don't want to lose it or mess it up. So we're helping them by providing the product, and they're helping us by keeping it full, and then they pay their rent on time, and then we can take that and provide more housing. So I think it's a rather than an adversarial relationship where you have builders out here that are taking out your eyeballs, we're providing something that kind of answers a need. And I think a lot of our residents are grateful that it even exists to where it's a mutually beneficial relationship. So we're trying to help each other.
Just to rewind a little bit, so it's been just a year since you even started researching this stuff.
Mhm.
You have the 11 bedroom, which is just an absolute cash cow. How
Yes.
many total properties do you have now that are operating under the shared housing model?
Yes. So we've got two that are on padsplit. So we've got one up in downtown Orlando that's got 7 residents. We've got one in Kissimmee on padsplit that's got 4 residents, and then we have one room that we boxed off the living room there. And then we've got one in Kissimmee that's not on padsplit, that's got the 5 beds on one side that share a kitchen, and then 5 on the other that have these little kitchenettes in there. And so that's a total of 10 there. And then we've got the 11 in St. Cloud, where all of those got these little kitchenettes inside of them. Now that I mentioned that, do you mind if I kind of jump over to the actual layout and how I talk about those little kitchenettes there? We put these little 2 burner stoves in there and we drop them into a countertop, but they plug into a regular 120 outlet. So you're not trying to run 240 power to run these little things. They're like hot plates, but they look like a 2 burner stove. That's kind of a way to kind of skirt around it being a bona fide kitchen, but it'll function as one, and it's good enough to pass the inspection to get the our voucher clients in. So that's been working out like a dream. So.
I have got the biggest smile on my face right now because I don't think I've ever put a blog out. I don't think we've ever put anything out where I talk about hot plates. But yeah, that's one of our little secrets, the hot plates.
Oh, okay.
And I think you're the first person that's ever really mentioned it. I don't think I've ever mentioned that before.
Man, I tell you, and it works like a dream. And we've had Section 8 inspectors come through, even the ones that claim to be the toughest of the tough. They come out there and we pass our inspections like a breeze. So we have HUD VASH, it's not HUD VASH. Yeah, HUD VASH. I'm sorry, HUD VASH. And then what is it? The SSVF. And then, anybody that has a voucher that covers either like a 0 bedroom or 1 bedroom, it all depends on which authority you come out there and they classify your little unit as. But again, we pass the inspections and we've got voucher holders that are paying every month, and we never have to worry about that money. It hits the account on the 3rd like clockwork.
That is awesome.
Love to hear it. So started researching about a year ago. When did you find us? When did you sign up for the gold course? And then when did you start taking action on that business model?
Yeah, honestly, I don't remember when I signed for the gold course, but I'd have to dig for that. But I know that I signed up for it and then didn't take action on it. One thing that I would kick myself over is I was running around spinning my wheels, going to HSN, is Homeless Services Network here in Central Florida. I think I heard about the COC from you guys, which I didn't even know what any of these terms were before, but I heard it on a podcast, and I would kind of hear things on one of your podcasts and then run around and spin my wheels. And I didn't take the course. Take the course, people. Because once I sat down and I actually said, all right, let me take some evenings and start listening and going through the course and looking at the documentation and then listening. One thing I loved hearing were the calls where you're actually calling these organizations, so you can get comfortable with what to say, how to say it. There's a sequence to it. There's a pattern to it. And it's just rinse and repeat. Do it over and over again. Don't matter who you're talking to. It goes the same way. And it works like a charm because these folks are dying to hear from us to say, all right, hey, you're looking to provide housing for these populations that are completely overlooked by the market. And they've got money to put them into your units, but they can't find landlords or willing owners willing to put up their property because of, whatever stigma or whatever idea folks have in their head about, oh, they're going to tear up my property, or, oh, they've come with all these problems. What I found in doing this is that these folks are just grateful that you exist. So I kind of lost track of your original question, but I hope I answered it.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
did. I got
All
it.
right.
I got into your story as well.
Mm.
What was the original question? I just wanted to get into just kind of a timeline for the folks.
Oh,
So,
yes. Yes, sir.
like,
Yes, sir. All right.
when did you start taking action after you you
Mm-hmm,
got
mm-hmm.
was it within the past couple months, 6 months, something like that? I'm
Yeah,
guessing.
so I would say it was probably about 7, 8 months. So we had purchased a property around the time that I started digging into the research online back in October and November. We had already had the property, and we were kind of going through our regular rehab, but we had not gotten far enough yet to make a decision on going the group home route or making them traditional single families. We were still in the middle of the rehab. The more research I did, I would take it to my dad. I'd say, "Hey, here's the numbers. Here's what's going on." And then I think what also helped is we knew someone else who was already in the business, but he's a pastor. He runs a few daycares, and he was doing the group homes, but he was providing the housing to a lot of his members and folks in the community that kind of came via his church. And all of his places were full. So we had kind of that proof of concept, but it was always for us. We always thought it would be too much of a headache to kind of go into that ourselves. So really, I'll say probably about April of this year did we, once we had that property completely rehabbed, and we threw it up on padsplit, and then I started doing my research. I had done my research and started making the connections to contacts at HSN, at the different homeless shelters, the different charities. I said no, they were opening my eyes to this world that existed, and then from there I said, all right, we're gonna do the St. Cloud one, and I'm gonna try to get some of the folks that come sponsored in there, as well as because we were throwing them up on Facebook, and to see if we can't get the feedback or get residents from both the open market and then also that we're coming sponsored by these different organizations. So I'll usually say like April is where, like, after we had that pad split one up, I said we're gonna try it without the pad split because, again, as great as it is, they're taking an 8% cut off the top. So it's a cost of doing business. But I said, I think we can do it and do well separately. And then we wouldn't have to lease the whole property over the pad split and then only be limited to members. We can get at the market by and large, or get at these different charities and organizations that are desperate to house people that need it. And I think we can do good on both fronts. So I would say about April is when we made that push. And then since then, I made a whole bunch of connections. I sat down in meetings because I was going out and I would make a phone call or I would send an email, and then I would find where the office was and then show up and then introduce myself. So it's worked out like a charm ever since. And we're doing pretty well as a result of that.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Mhm.
That's kind of what you were getting into anyways,
Mhm.
kind of how important it was to make those connections and develop those relationships. And also when you do start to make those calls, we've noticed this with our coaching clients, our done with you clients. It really does open your eyes. The welcoming that you get, the
Yes. Yes.
you get a real good sense for the need in
Yeah.
pretty much every major city out there at this
Yes.
point. Why don't you talk about that? Like, how did you find these places, and what are these relationships like? We're talking about these organizations. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. You type in into Google continuum of care, and wherever you're at, it'll send you down a rabbit hole that'll get you where you need to go, and especially if you're trying to make the connections with the folks who have the clients that need to be placed. They're there eager to tell you how it works, the minimum standards of the property, because a lot of these caseworkers and case managers and housing placement folks have 20, 30 people on their dockets that need to be placed, and there's no movement. You have folks that have been in shelters or in temporary housing or transitional housing programs that don't know what's going to happen once their time is up. The 6 months or the 8 months or the year, they don't know what's going to happen to them once their time is up because those transitional or programs have a time limit. And then the shelters are all overrun. You make that connection to your local continuum of care or reach out to your local homelessness organizations, any organizations that are geared towards addressing homelessness, and then especially folks who suffer from conditions, whether it be, a disability or some sort of substance addiction. There are people there that are trying to steer you to whoever can or needs to place clients. And then from there you have that conversation, you be upfront with your situation. At the time where I was trying to kind of garner up the interest, we had properties that were under construction but not yet ready. But I said, I'd love to have this lined up to where once we get our COs, you all come out, you all come see it and see if it may work for your organization. So it's just a matter of doing that footwork both online, but then taking it from online into the real world and making something happen.
Yeah. So guys, take note of that. Harris did have a pretty large portfolio of residential properties kind of scattered throughout Florida, but I want you to make note about what he just said when he first started marketing. He did not have the properties ready or anything like that. He started doing the marketing ahead of time. And again, I think you said just to gauge the interest and just to develop those relationships, correct,
Correct.
Harris?
Correct. Because you want to establish yourself as a provider. And then from there, it's great if you have something ready that you can invite them out to come see. But they just want to know that they have a resource that they can call. So even if you're not ready at that time, you establish yourself as a resource or potential resource, they're going to call you. And that's what we saw.
You also touch on a huge point that we're always trying to get across to our coaching clients, just the importance of following up. So you mentioned you're making your phone calls, you're making those emails, and then you just stopped in person. Maybe if you did,
Yep.
if you didn't hear back, or maybe you were just talking to a gatekeeper or something like that. What was your experience like, going to market in person to these
Man,
organizations?
I tell you, without getting too political, what I found, especially after reaching out to these organizations, is that they're excited to announce whatever award that they received from HUD or from the state or from some big donor. But then there's a huge gap in between this lofty goal, this idea, this mission, and then putting it into practice. So you have a whole bunch of folks that are administrators and you have my boss's boss and you got to reach out to the director or I'm the assistant and the secretary. You've got to fight through all of that to get to the decision makers. And I've had some frank conversations with employees of some of these organizations that have been there for decades, and they'll tell me straight up that there's 4 or 5 people now doing my job that I used to do some time ago by myself. Now there's 4 or 5 people doing my job, and it's kind of out of my hands. So going in, understanding that you got to kind of fight through the noise to get to the decision makers, I think that's proven invaluable, and it will prove invaluable to anybody else that's willing to put that into practice. You're gonna have to be courageous. You're gonna have to be persistent. You're gonna have to be being that guy that's there at 8:45. They open at 9, and you're just kind of standing around saying, "Hey, I'm here hoping to speak to so and so." I did that. So I think putting those tools into action will certainly help you, and then it'll help you help a whole lot of folks that are in need that may be getting lost in the noise and getting lost in the mix. Because a lot of these organizations are just huge now. I think in their operational costs or in their operations, they may have lost the ability to quickly and effectively and efficiently actually address the need. So that's where we come in. We got to fill in that gap.
This is 100% real deal, folks. So again, take note of this stuff. The organizations, they're not necessarily compensated for running a lean organization. Maybe I'll let you expound on this topic.
Oh my gosh, don't get me started with government bureaucracy. Unfortunately, in a lot of respects, that's kind of the game that we're in when you start doing what we do in the group home courses. But yeah, I mean, Brandon, and you hit the nail on the head. These people they're going to create a job, and then they're going to hire 5 people to do that job for them, and they're going to oversee it. That then becomes their little fiefdom. Realistically, like, you could probably fire 75% of these bureaucrats out there. It's the lube industry. I mean, they wouldn't even be there if it weren't for the government.
Right.
So this is the world that we live in. So you got to learn how to play it.
Exactly.
Yeah, the follow-up, I mean, in every business is key, but we do have that extra layer of bureaucracy when you are making those relationships. So guys, don't get discouraged when you send out a bunch of emails and you don't hear back. That doesn't mean that the opportunity's not there. You have to follow up with these people constantly. So
Follow up is the secret.
yeah, our assistants will give maybe 24, 48 hours. If they don't hear back from an email, they're going to call, and we just continue to hit. You got to continue pounding these people till you actually get the response. And eventually, Harris, you touched on this. I mean, eventually you are going to get to the right people. And once you do talk to them, we've kind of touched on what the response is like. Eventually you do get to the people that are actually in it for the right reasons, and they do want to help the community out. And you hit the nail on the head. It is literally your job. It's your duty to fill in those gaps. Don't let these people tell you that, oh yeah, well, we'll get back to you. No, it's literally your duty. Like, if you don't have that attitude, these people aren't going to find housing, unfortunately.
Right. Because the thing is, there is absolutely a housing crisis, because you have folks that are homeless, you have folks that have unstable housing, you have folks that are bouncing from shelter to shelter or living out of their car. This whole world has been completely opened up to me, and it's been existing in plain sight. So my thing is, I think part of it with a lot of these organizations is they're used to a big problem being big. So then it's like, all right, well, I've got 30 cases and we've got 10 folks in my department that all have 30 cases, and they're used to those cases going unanswered. And our job is to become that answer. So
It's the homeless industrial complex. And you guys hear me riff on it periodically when I'm sending out emails. But this problem is only going to get worse. And so what you see is it'll typically stall out every couple of years, where you're like, oh, maybe things are getting better or they're not as bad. And then every 4 to call it 8 years, something really big happens.
right.
And the next thing you know, there's more homeless people, right? And the next thing you know, the price of housing goes from $275,000 for a home up to $420,000. And people can no longer afford homes, and those that can afford homes aren't renting them out to bump the rents up, because there's so much money out there chasing these houses. And so even though things may seem like they're slowing down or they're getting under control right now, just give it another year and you're going to see it's going to get crazy again. So, and it's not just the money supply, it's the artificial intelligence and everything else. These companies are going to start firing people and laying people off. And the minute that one company lays off 6,000 people, boom, another company is going to do it. They're just like waiting. And one time you get a public announcement, they'll all start doing it. And it's just going to get bad. So there's going to be a huge, huge, huge need for this type of housing.
And the tidal wave is coming because homelessness has been made illegal. Here in Florida, if you're not those encampments that were in public right-of-ways or underneath the bridge or at that little plot of land that hidden by the bushes that might be owned by the DOT or whatever, all of that is illegal now. So I've got some contacts that have been in some of the closed door meetings with city officials, where the city officials off the record are saying, oh, well, what do we do about, our homeless population? Well, let's shovel them off to Orange County, because, Orange County's got the most resources. They're playing games with people's lives here.
You're right. They're playing hot potato. That's what you see in Texas. Most of the homeless population is getting shipped down to Austin because it's a very liberal city. And, unfortunately, the Austin taxpayers have to suffer the burden of it, because they've got all these homeless people going there. And then the next thing you know, the Austin city managers bumping up the tax rates by, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8%. So this is a game of hot potato that's happening all across the United States.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it makes me think of that John Kennedy remark, you know, the Chinese word for danger, chaos, is also the same word for opportunity.
Mm.
So look, there's a lot of chaos out there in the market. There's a lot of homelessness. Guess what? There's also a lot of opportunity if you go and work hard and you know, change people's lives and change your initial life.
Exactly.
Love to hear it. I think you hit the nail on the head again, Harris, that it's just the beginning of the tidal wave.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You
Yep.
know,
I mean,
all these market indicators, and they're not pointing to the demand for affordable housing to go down anytime soon.
exactly. You know what? I actually failed to mention that we did dip our toe into the 2 beds per room model. So we did look into reentry, and we kind of got hooked up with a reentry program here in Florida. I don't know. Can I mention their name or
Sure.
yeah. Okay, yeah, it's Operation New Hope. They focus on reentry, and they kind of do 360 program where they get formerly incarcerated folks, get them either enrolled or into job training programs, train them up on how to sit for an interview, to how to dress, to finances, so on and so forth. So we provide a house for that as well. And my thing is where I'm at for what we're able to do, I can't do it alone. So we've got the reentry, we've got all sorts of clients at our homes, whether they may be elderly, we got students, we've got veterans. So we've got kind of a mixed bag. And again, I know some folks may be concerned about mixing populations, but for ours being the privates, they all end up functioning like neighbors. So I think maybe it's a little bit of luck, or maybe we do kind of a good job screening our folks or having sit downs and frank conversations about our expectations. And the occupancy license agreement works like a charm. I think them just reading it, it kind of it conveys a message where it's like, all right, well, I better tighten up. And then you couple that with, you know, the quality of work that we put into our properties. It's like, you know, again, you know, folks don't want to mess that up. And then now I'm kind of thinking while I'm moving here. One another population that we've come across through different inquiries is folks who are maybe blind or physically disabled, but don't want to be in a facility setting, but they require a unit or a room or a property that's ADA accessible. So the ones that we have under construction now, we're incorporating that into our builds where we set aside a number of our little mini suites or units specifically that are ADA and zero barrier compliant. And you know, again, that it's just another niche within the niche. So again, the need is absolutely insane. I'm in it right now, and I can't keep up with the demand. So just wanted to throw that in there.
Love it. Love it. So, uh, just I want to talk about management just a little bit, and then before we wrap it up here,
Mhm.
because you
Sure.
are starting, you're starting to scale, you're starting to have a lot of you know, a lot more bodies in
Mhm.
the units now in the properties. What's management like? Do you have like a house
Yeah.
supervisors in the properties? Is there a manager underneath you yet? What's been your experience like on the
Yeah.
management side of things, again, compared to the buy and hold model? Because a lot of
Sure.
traditional landlords, investors, you touched on it earlier. There's a lot of kind of negative kind of
Mhm.
connotation and misconceptions, I think, when it comes to dealing with these demographics. Well,
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
interested to hear what your experience has been like.
Right. So the way I look at it is that we've been able to backdoor multifamily using single family homes. So I just treat it like you know, we're a slightly larger portfolio owner or portfolio manager, and I've got an app that we use is a Turbo Tenant, And the same rooms and the suites, I throw them on there as if they're all their own separate units. And that's been working like a dream. In addition to that, I've got an assistant that works underneath me, and she's usually the person that most of our residents or potential clients, they interface with her first, and then I'm kind of the big picture guy. And again, we are still operating a full service, construction company and development company. So we're kind of doing that. So I'm, and again, I'm used to doing, kind of spinning multiple plates. But at the point we're at now, I definitely do need her to kind of jump on getting our clients onboarded, making sure the paperwork is right, interfacing with the different housing specialists and client and case managers. So at the point I'm at now, it's she and I that have been operating kind of this wing of the business, and I'll say whether it be TurboTenant or some other app, you'll want to utilize technology and leverage technology to really make this happen. So far we're kind of playing it by ear, but I think once we get these other three houses, get through the rehabs on these and get those up and running, I'll likely bring on someone else. So that I can kind of, again, withdraw from so much of the operations and start just looking at all right, what's our next acquisition, and then focusing on that side. Because once you get them in, and again, I keep going back to the St. Cloud property. Once they're in there, the biggest issues you have to worry about now are like, is everybody taking out the garbage, parking, and that's about it. So I think if you do a good job of screening folks, if you do a good job with the paperwork, especially, I keep going back to that license agreement, and then you go over it with your residents, that answers a lot of questions and addresses a lot of concerns before they even happen. And then you can focus on, all right, you keep the grass cut, make sure that everything's up running, and keep your residents and tenants happy. And then I can kind of focus on other things. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Very cool. So you've been able to manage these with not much changes to your kind of previous or current infrastructure. It sounds like
Right. Correct.
Is the assistant new for this, or was she a previous assistant in
Oh
the?
no, she's new. I had she had an interest in getting into real estate. I brought her on board, and then showed her the inner workings of our business. I brought her to some of our meetings, and then I'll have her take calls, and then I'll sit next to her and kind of answer questions or kind of coach her along. But now I don't have to do anything. She's got it on lock now. So
Very cool. So
yeah.
it's you've probably heard us talk about it. Andy calls his folks like that the operational manager. So
Mhm.
it's like you got a good operational manager.
Yes. Oh, yes, yes. And I think the key is someone that is eager to learn, that can grasp and understand the mission, and then is looking to kind of be a self-starter, you know what I'm saying? So you don't have to be, on their back all the time. You kind of you set your expectations, you set your parameters, and then you just say go. And then along the way there may be some correction here and there. So I'll say probably it took maybe about a month of doing what we're doing without me, stopping and kind of babysitting her, just to kind of pick it up. And then now it's to the point where I only have to respond to if we have if we're missing a window screen on an inspection or a smoke detector or something like that. So I can focus. I can look left while she looks right. So that's where we're at now.
And love to hear it. I'm sure you can you know, it may not sound like it with all the game that's getting dropped, but guys, this Harris is just getting started. We're talking to him about maybe 5 or 6 months since he first kind of started taking action with our business model. So I'm sure you're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm guessing you guys have some big plans over the next year or two.
Absolutely, absolutely. So again, we do have three other properties here that are currently undergoing rehab. One in Winter Park that's gonna have a 12 bed, 12 bath. One in downtown Orlando that'll end up being a 11 bed, 11 bath, and then one in it's closer to I-4 area. It's a little bit south Orlando. That is gonna end up having 15 beds and 15 baths. That's that big one that I mentioned earlier that was like almost 4,000 square feet under air. It was just this big old house that they just kept adding on to. They're probably encroaching in all the setbacks, but we were able to buy it as a big box and then do what we do best with it. So,
Guys, you've seen us. We'll not necessarily advertise it, but when we break down the numbers, we try to keep it conservative. Andy, would you say your average property nets around 2 or 3K? Oh, we lost Andy.
oh,
All right.
no problem.
Well, that's what you've probably heard us say that on the
Yes,
podcast and on the
yes.
webinars and stuff.
Mm-hmm,
It sounds like you're going bigger. I think I heard a couple major cash cows coming online.
Exactly. So, the thing is again, because we focus on the privates, we again, the shared model, there's certainly a need for it, but I think what we've kind of looked at is what's the next step after that, and again, a niche within a niche. We say, all right, after transitional or semi-permanent housing, what's the next step? Which folks are dying to have just their own little spot, and what we found is the need is there with all different backgrounds at all different levels and different ages. And I think we found a sweet spot that we're gonna try to utilize. And I invite others to try it too. My thing is the need is out there, and the pie is big enough for me to be eating on one side and not even see you eating too.
I'm sure you follow the real estate industry, probably network locally there. You don't have a lot of competition.
No, not for what we're doing. No, most folks don't even know it exists. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can look outside any major city. There is clearly a lack of supply and
Mhm.
not a lack of demand. And at this
Right.
point, it's basically a crisis. I want to reiterate what you said. You kind of took it upon yourself you almost saw it as a duty for you to fill in those gaps once you realized kind of the bureaucracy and kind of how
Mhm.
they were feeling. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Our thing is we're in a position where we can do it and we can do well doing it. And at that point, it's a no-brainer. This is what we're supposed to be doing, and we're gonna keep working it. Again, it's gonna come with some pushback. You might have some pushback from code enforcement, or you might have some pushback from a neighbor. But again, I think the overarching sentiment from what we're doing, damn, where have you been all this time?
yeah, I really believe it is the solution to the problem. It's a win-win on all sides.
Hmm.
For the folks listening out there, once you adopt that mentality, once you learn the business model, and once you just kind of put your all into it, and like Harris said earlier, get obsessed with it. It's there's no stopping. And you don't need to have a Harris amazing background, a ton of real estate knowledge, construction knowledge. Looking back at it, you can kind of see how you don't necessarily need that to get into this.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I think that's is so interesting. And even with knowing what I know, doing what I do, I still tune in because I find it interesting that folks are able to achieve same level of success in running these group homes, maybe not knowing how to build a home from scratch, or maybe not knowing how to throw a permit package together. You don't need to know what I know to do it, but certainly what I do helps us do it. But it can be done with folks that know less. And it's just a matter of you putting in the work, you going out there and getting the connections and then maintaining those connections. You can make it happen too. So
100%. Well, let's wrap it up there, man. You've given a ton of game. We'll definitely have to come back and do a part two. Like you said, man, this is just the beginning. So I can
yeah,
wait to see
again,
what you guys do in like 6
thank
to
you.
12 months. Is going to be
Thank you.
crazy.
Again, I'd be honored. Again, I'm a huge fan of the podcast. I appreciate you having me.
Any parting words for the folks out there?
Get up off your butt and do it. You heard it. You've been hearing it. It's now time for you to put in that work, put in that effort, show some courage, and get it done.
Love it. Guys, if you are just stumbling on this and you're interested in learning more about this business, go to grouphomeriches.com. Sign up for the free material. We have a ton of material out there. We really just want to educate, look for people that just feel like this is the right business for them. From there, we have a whole bunch of tools and supplements that are going to help you along the journey. We have the gold course. We have a couple options for coaching. We have a new private community on School. At the time of recording, that's less than a Netflix subscription. You have access to over 2,000 people in the same boat as you, varying levels of experience, real estate investors, newbies. We're in there. The coaches are in there. Harris, if you're not in there yet, we got to get you in there.
I will.
Yeah. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, Brandon at grouphomeriches.com, or Andy at groupHomeRiches.com. Harris, thank you so much for your time to man. Killer interview here.
It's been an honor. I appreciate it. Again, thank you.
All right, man. Have a great day.
All right, you too.
Bye.